Hi everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to make this gorgeous pop-up book. It looks complicated, but once you learn the main idea, it's rather simple to do. A lot of the effects have been created by layering, so we will be taking a deep dive into this fascinating topic. Here is the main equipment I used for this project. To create clean and crisp folds, you can use a scoreboard like this Sizzix Cut and Score, or a bone folder. If you do not have these, use a blunt butter knife or the back of a pair of scissors on a hard surface that does not mark with pressure. The embellishments I have used are pop-out pictures from the Hunkydory Premium magazine. This magazine is explored in my video, The Ornate Bandstand. Link to this is in the description below. In these example pages, you can see how I've used a mixture of my own dies and paper with the paper and dies that came from the magazine. This is to create background layers and extra detailing embellishments, such as the small leaves and flowers applied to the base page. Here we can see how the layering of the fine cut paper builds up an effective background, allowing the images to pop out and also creating a rich depth to the overall pages. First stage is to fold the paper in half. I've already folded this page, but I just wanted to show you how to create the fold with the score and cut board. Alternatively, you can use a bone folder or a substitute. The main point is to get a crisp fold. To make the pop-up muscle, I'm cutting a piece of craft paper around half of the height of the book page. This will be the primary pop-up mechanism of the page. Make sure the card is strong enough to support these mechanisms, but not so stiff it hampers the closing of the page. The paper is placed front side down and it's been folded around 1 inch and scored. Then it is folded in half and scored again. Lastly, it is unfolded. Holding the paper with the right side out, a 45-degree triangle is cut at the point where the inch fold meets the halfway fold. You can see the V shape it makes here. To keep the aesthetics of the pop-out linked to the base design, you can choose a design feature from the base page and apply it to the main muscle. I chose the lily pad leaves and draw them across the top section of the muscle. This pattern can then be fussy cut out. The V shape that you create can be lined up against the fold of the base page. Make sure each side is not hanging over the base page. If it does, trim it and check again to see if it works. Fold over the section with the V shape and apply glue. I am using a PVA glue that does not discolour as it ages. This is important to check if you wish to keep your book for a long time. Once all the area has been covered, line up the V with the centre fold of the page and press down. Fold over and burnish. Now we must apply the glue to the other side of the muscle. I prefer to take the muscle off after this process while the glue is still wet, as I prefer to decorate off the page, and I'm handily left with glue marks on the page that I can use as a guide for later. You can equally decorate it before trimming or while it is on the page. Glue the muscle back down so you can trim off any excess like this triangle. This is to prepare the muscle for embellishing. To create this organic pattern background, you can glue down the embellishments in quite a random fashion at first. Don't try to focus on the right or the wrong at this point. It's all about letting it happen. Making choices comes later. The first aim is to break up the pattern or colour, if it's plain, of the main muscle. The cut pattern at the top of the muscle will start to blend in. It will not become completely lost. It is around this stage I will start to make choices. You may feel, as I did, to bring another colour in. Also question the placement of the embellishments. You want to create a pattern of equal noise between the background and the embellishments. You'll see here that even though there's a lot of layering, some images can still be seen. This is a lovely subtle effect. You may see the bird or the little rose. If you don't have die cutting equipment, you can fussy cut out images you like. Painted paper doilies work a treat for a lace effect. Texturizing and colouring them in also work. Sections of doilies can be cut out at random and specifically. Gluing fine embellishments can be quite bothersome. I personally prefer to use a paintbrush. I have seen others use sponges or directly pick up glue by placing the embellishments in a very shallow tray of glue. If you know any other methods, please do share in the comments. I would appreciate it, and so would others. Every day is a school day. It is now time to reattach the muscle, so I reapply the glue to one side. Lining the V shape up again with the centre fold, you can see that I'm using the glue mark on the page as a guide. Press down, making sure all the glued area makes contact with the page. Now fold over the muscle and reapply glue to the other side. Once this is done, fold the muscle over, then burnish the page. Trim off any excess and let it dry. Here are the picture components. Hunkydory has really thought about versatility in their design of these, as the frames around the central image can pop out. For the large images, there are 4 pop-out options. Using the negative space of the frames with the image inserted produces an interesting alternative of the idea of reflection and mirroring. It is important to check that the images will not protrude when the page is closed. I do this check by simply pivoting the picture down from its intended position. The embellishments you attach to the page also must be checked for overhang. This is an example of a connecting muscle that will be attached to the main muscle. To make them, take a strip of paper. The paper I am using has a weight between paper and card. Fold up the paper. The size of the folds depend on how much you wish your element to stick out of its attaching surface. Fold out and create a cube. Cut off any excess. I prefer to make a mix of these before I start, or you can do it as you go. Apply glue to one end and form an even cube shape. clip it and leave it to dry. The frame for this section was a bit too long, so I trimmed it before gluing it down. I'd like to point out that the pages in this book were deliberately designed to be slightly asymmetrical. This is a lovely fine line between ease and discomfort. The brain generally finds symmetry pleasing due to its ease to process, though slightly asymmetric presents a cognitive challenge, causing the brain to engage more actively in interpreting the visual information. This can be perceived as intriguing and captivating, making us spend more time focusing on it. The famous oil and canvas painting called The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh, made in 1889, is a great example of an image being totally asymmetric, but balanced and captivating. Returning to the build, I am checking the image is in the right place, so the appropriate muscle can be chosen. Once the choice is made, glue the muscle on and let it dry before attaching it to the book. Here I made a wee mistake. By placing the top muscle too high, I noticed this later and fixed it. I am not sure about anyone else, but I often make these kind of mistakes when I work. I am sure it's because my brain starts to wander. It has long been considered a fact that we perceive symmetrical facial features as more attractive. But in January 2024, a research team published an article in the Journal of Evolution and Human Behavior, where test subjects were to pick out who they felt were most attractive from a pool of faces of 1,550 people from all around the world. It turned out that symmetry had no importance on their decision. In the recent past, it was also believed that people with symmetrical appearances were able to fight off stresses and disease better. This has been rejected by a research team who wrote the paper Human Body Symmetry and Immune System Efficiency in Healthy Adults, which was published in the American Journal of Biological Anthropology in 2018. They concluded that the strength of one's immune system has nothing to do with the symmetry of one's face. In fact, the faces that we assume are symmetrical are not that mathematically symmetric. Never mind that within our own bodies, our organs are packed asymmetrically, so they fit and have room to function. Of our two lungs, the left side is slightly smaller than the right to make room for your heart. So now there's no excuses to be at peace and love ours and others' asymmetries. This is where I realised my error with the top muscle being too high to actually stick on the main muscle. I just popped off the little muscle and put a bridging tab over the perforations for sturdiness. I correctly repositioned the muscle so it can stick to the main muscle. To attach the muscles, the bottom one has to be glued on two sides. The one that will attach to the page and the other one that backs onto the main muscle. The upper support muscle just needed glued to the side that backs on to the main muscle. Some time is needed to make sure they're in good contact with the main muscle. You can build a secondary muscle in practically the same way as a main muscle. It's actually easier as the muscle is smaller and doesn't need to be trimmed so much. Once again, I'm picking another design feature from the page to draw on the back. I have chosen the petals from the water lily flower. I can use their shape to repeat as a silhouette so it runs across the page. A pair of small sharp scissors really helps when fussy cutting the design out. Fussy cutting is a powerful tool and it gives you more design options and does not tie you down to needing dies or a cutting machine. Place the secondary muscle on the page to see if it works. If so, once again, fold over the bottom section to form the attachment strips. This can be smaller than the main muscle, around 1.5 centimeters. Once folded, score it with the bone folder. Then fold the secondary muscle in half and cut the 45-degree triangle. Fold everything back and place it on the page to see if it works. I find this is the point I can see the visual depth start to build up. Start to build up the embellishment layers as done for the main muscle. The difference here is that we're building layers upon a patterned background. This may seem too much visual information or maximalist at first, but let's think about how we perceive such situations in everyday life. There is an idea that we have a visual attention. For example, when observing a bustling street, there is a lot of information. Our visual attention allows us to selectively process what information is important to us and what information is not. I personally see this whole piece like a decorated screen on the page. These highly decorated sections also work as backgrounds that allow the main pop-out image to stand out. It is similar to if you were looking at a forest scene, with a white cottage sitting in a clearance in front of a forest. The cottage would naturally take prominence, even though the forest has a vast amount of information, so much that we cannot take it all in, lending it to become some sort of solid background. As I have talked about before, the theme of the book is an organic one. This method can be employed to get this effect. Why would this be so? Because it lends itself to the natural landscape and aerial perspective. Aerial perspective gives the illusion of depth. When looking across a landscape, we see things clearer that are closer to us due to high contrast. And when we look further away, things look more blurred as the contrast decreases. The book's pop-up scenes borrow this fact, where the background muscles are not as clear, as the detailing is more blurred and has a lower contrast, but the pop-up images are clear and crisp to understand, rendering them to feel closer. Hence we create depth. Thus, the overall feel of the pop-up scene has a landscape quality. This adds to the sensory experience of it being natural and organic, even though the imagery and colours have a synthetic appearance. Now I can place the secondary muscle down and check if it does not overhang the page when it will be closed. Apply glue to one of the attachment strips and make sure it goes to the edges. Line up the V with the center fold and burnish. Fold over the secondary muscle and apply glue to the other attachment strip. Fold up into position and make sure the glue is attached. You may need to hold it in position for a little while. Once this is dried, you can close the page to burnish. This should be done at each stage to check everything is working. Now it is time to attach more images. I have another pop-out image from the Hunkydory magazine. What is different here is that it's a circle, so to attach it I must fold it at the bottom so it can be glued to the page. Once folded, remember to score the fold. I have chosen to place it on the right hand side as it fits nicely with the height of the secondary muscle. I've decided to use a rectangular muscle to support the back of the circle. When you're attaching a muscle like this, make sure it lines up with the base of the picture element. Once again, I'm gluing a bridging tab for structural support as the image has perforations. The glue must be applied to the back of the rectangular muscle, the bottom, and the base of the circle. Take time to make sure that the glue fully covers the area. Put the image element in position and hold until it takes. Here I have an extra frame I wish to use. It's not even perfectly cut, but that doesn't matter really, as it will be transformed. Firstly, I fold it in half, and on one of the halves I'm going to build up a lacy pattern by gluing little embellishments together. I like to include embellishments that have some damage to them, like if they were not cut right or ripped coming out of a die. It is also good to use leftover paper from the die cut or fussy cutting. Including these parts helps to break up the repetitive pattern, rendering an organic feel. This idea is akin to the aesthetics of a tree. The leaves on the tree are all slightly different to one another, producing a natural effect. I've never made one of these before, so I had to spend a bit of time puzzling out where was best to attach the muscles. I ended up placing them at either end so they could attach to the frame for structural support, as the lacework is quite delicate. Trim off the overhanging embellishments, then glue on the muscle on either side. I wanted to hide the muscles a bit, so I attached more embellishments on the top and trimmed off the excess. This was in order to diffuse the white space, so when you look through the lacework you can't really see it. Now it's time to attach this element, so I check out its placement by testing it out in situ before sticking it down. When I'm sure, I apply glue to the bottom of the frame and the muscle, as well as the side that backs onto the secondary muscle. I really like seeing frames on the page overlap here. It brings an intricacy to this section of the page. To marry this element with the page, I attached some of the same type of embellishments I used on the lacework within the half circle. I have these 6 little elements that I decided to lay on the page itself and put the little vine leaf onto one of the lacework elements. Later on, I decide to make a tiny muscle at the front of this to finish it off. This is a short section showing how to make a valley fold muscle. As you can see here, the pop-up bends away from the viewer, producing an alternative arrangement. This is a card I intend to use for the valley fold page, and this is the card I'm going to use for the main muscle. I folded it the same way as the previous page, fold in half and fold 1 inch up from the bottom. You can cut out a 45-degree triangle the usual way. The valley fold pop-up forms through the placement of the muscle on the page. Turn the page around so you can stick a low-tack tape behind the attachment strip on each side to hold it in place. Make sure that the middle fold matches up with the center fold of the page. Fold the pages together and you'll see there's an overhang. Cut this off. Gently remove the tape and holding the muscle in place, use the tape to mark where the muscles are to be placed back on the page. Once again, I'm going to take a design feature from the page to create the pattern running across the top of the muscle. This is to break up the heavy lines of the cut muscle. That's it cut. Now you can apply the glue to both of the attachment strips. Line it up with the ends meeting the ends of the low tack tape. When this feels secure, take the tape away. First of all, I'm going to cover the cardboard for the outer covers. I have a lightish weight craft paper and I'm going to trim it down so it has an even border. I have made the thickness of this border around 2 inches so I have plenty of coverage. Picking the smoothest side, I apply a thin even layer of glue using a palette knife. I have chosen the smoothest side as this will be the face that is outside of the cover, so you want as little bumpy bits as possible. When placing the paper down, I'm only being rough about the placement as there's enough paper to deal with this. For neater fits, I would recommend being careful so there's enough paper to cover each side of the board. Burnish all the glued areas as well. There may be bubbles, but I find if the surface has had a thin, even application of glue, these disappear when it is dried. Some papers can react badly with wet glue, so if you're unsure, do a wee test strip. Fold over 3 sides of the border using the bone folder, scoring each fold down. Personally, I like to gently score the edges to give a more boxed edge rather than a rounded. Then you can cut a triangle about ½ centimetre away from the card. Then trim off the inner triangle, making sure not to cut all the way down to the point, leaving a little corner. This is so your paper covers the corner of the card. It helps to tuck in the paper. Apply a thin layer of glue to the length, including the little corners. Fold over and press down. For the rest of the edges, fold over one length, cut the corner the same way and glue as before. Here we're going to make another section of the outer cover, the part that covers the binding of the book. The strip of paper needs to be bigger than required so you have enough room for gluing it to the covers. If it is too excessive, it can always be trimmed down. The binding strip also needs to be the same length of the cover. Once this is cut, on the inside of the cardboard where all the folded borders can be seen, put down a 1 cm strip of thin even glue. And attach the binding strip like so. Due to the nature of the build of a pop-up book, it holds a bit of tension like a spring, so it can have a tendency to want to spring open a bit. To combat this, I'm adding a ribbon to act as a fastening on each cover so the opening can be tied together. I'll take about 15 cm length and glue around 2 to 3 cm in the centre of the opposite page of the binding strip. I have chosen this blue paper out of my own stock to line the inside of the book cover. I have trimmed it so around 2 mm of the white borders the blue paper. Also left excess. This is where the cover attaches to the pages of the book. The excess I left is a bit on the narrow side. Preferably I would like at least another 2 inches. Put another thinnish even layer of glue down and stick down the lining paper. At this point, it's the time to decorate the front of the page. I will be using leftover cutting scraps and leftover paper die cuts. I'm going to build up a flat pattern. That is a pattern with no depth. And I've decided to keep going with the idea of an organic pattern. That is one with no repetition. This has a lovely effect on the viewer's experience, where their eye will never really rest on one part, always moving to look at something else within the design. Organic patterns often invoke a sense of movement, similar to the works of Sonia Delaunay's dynamic designs, but in a more fluid and natural way. They guide the eye gently across the surface, offering a visual, engaging experience without harsh, edged contrast. This makes them feel both modern and timeless. I will tell you a little bit about Sonia Delaunay, as her life and works are very inspiring. She was a pioneering artist of the early 20th century. She started her studies in Germany in 1903. She revolutionized design with her bold use of colours and rhythmic geometric patterns. She was also a key figure in the Orpheus movement. Sonia's work went beyond traditional painting and extended into textiles, fashion and interior design. What made her patterns so striking was her innate sense of movement, an effect achieved through an interplay of contrasting hues and overlapping forms, where the viewer's gaze was constantly engaged and never allowed to settle. Her textile designs in particular embodied this kinetic quality. Whether in fashion or home decor, her fabrics transformed static surfaces into dynamic experiences, wrapped in the human body in a visual rhythm. This is a very important statement. When we create pattern, we are transforming the visual experience into one of motion. Sonia fantastically blurred the line between fine art and applied art. She ensured that movement was not just a theme in her work, but an active element that engaged and enlivened everyday objects. Interestingly, Sonia's dynamic patterns emerged during a period of rapid technological advancement. particularly with the invention and expansion of fast transportation in the early 20th century. The rise of automobiles, aeroplanes, and high-speed trains transformed how people experience movement, space, and time. This new kinetic energy of modern life was deeply reflected in her work, as her vibrant, rhythmic patterns seemed to echo the speed, the rhythm, and the motion of the rapidly changing world. This is interesting how artists and makers' works are inherently affected by the time they live in. I often wonder what we, the current people, are absorbing from our experience of the world in these times and how it's been recorded into our works. Will one day in the future people look back at our work and be able to see the influences of our time so strikingly and clear? I can often struggle to see this, but I suppose this book is handmade with organic patterns, made by paper from industrial processes where the images have been produced digitally. Could this be a strong indicator of how we juggle with the handmade and the ever-developing digital technology? This book is time-consuming to build. It is slow work. It shows how even with all the digital advancements, we still crave to make and desire the handmade. I wonder if you've noticed any of the current times in your work. Using strips of card around 1 centimetre wide to make spacers. These are to create width at the binding end of the book to balance out the thickness of the pages due to the pop-up elements. I place my strips on and then trim them, but you can trim them before if you wish. These only go on one side of the page. I imagine you could do both depending on the thickness of the pop-ups. Press in place and let dry a bit. I am bringing over another page to show you how you would attach them. The page with the spacer attaches to the page with no spacer. Now I'm going to do the same and attach a spacer to the other page. I've already attached the other two pages, and when the spacer is dried, I will attach the other pages like so. The spacers have dried a bit, so I'm going to apply a liberal amount of glue. Lining up the pages, you just need to press them together, making sure both parts are in full contact with each other, then leave them to dry. I find clipping the pages a good way to keep the pages in position while drying, just because there's a bit of weight to the pop-up working. Putting the two sets of pages together, they are now ready to be glued, with one page having a spacer and the other does not. Use a liberal spread of glue, making sure it gets into the step between the spacer and the page. Butting the pages together, press them together and realign if they move. Remember to check that the pages are all in the correct direction. Go round and press all the edges and put clips on to prevent the pages moving while they dry. It is also good to make sure the binding area with the spacers are sticking together and not coming apart. Now it's time to finish building the cover. Since the pages are all stuck together, you can measure up how wide the binding strip should be. Lay the page inside to see how much you need. Then apply glue while holding everything in place. Fold over the binding strip and press down. To finish the cover off, I need to line the left-hand cover. I have cut it just as we done the last time, allowing for a 2mm white border and an overhang to attach the book page to. I had also attached another ribbon, this time to the front, just because I was wondering what way will be effective when the book has been used for some time. At present, I favour attaching the ribbon to the inside page as shown earlier. It is good at this point to fold over the lining extensions in preparation to attach the pages of the book. Before you attach them, take the glued pages and attach the spacer on each side of the stack of pages. Place the pages inside the cover and glue the back of the page facing the inside cover. Attach the excess lining, make sure that they meet. Put some glue over the paper that has attached to the page and place a piece of paper over the back and trim off any excess. Repeat the steps to the other side of the book. Once again, apply the glue to the page and the spacer. Make sure it gets into all the corners. Pull the extra page lining over and press down. Once you are satisfied with this, apply glue to the inner page and spread out evenly, then attach the paper you intend to line the inner page with. Go through and check the book for anything that has not been stuck down well and reapply glue to these areas. Okay, that's all done. It's looking good. Now I'm going to decorate the spine of the book. For the spine, I'm using scraps from the lilac I used to line the book. The lilac is not seen much in the design of the book, so it's a nice little contrast. I think it will marry up perfectly on the spine. Once again, I'm going to balance the noise of the pattern with the white and the lilac, leaving a tiny 2mm border of white to create a crisp edge within all the detail. I don't feel pressured to get this pattern right. There's no right, just personal taste. I like using the leftover white scraps to build up some of the open lace pattern back into the design. Well, this has been a great journey. The book looks fantastic. I think the ribbon is just what this kind of structure needs. It will last a long time, and I reckon that the cost must have been under £30 easily. The only thing I have left to do is to write a story for the book, using the images on the pages as prompts. I will make a pocket for the mini storybook here on the back page. If you would like to see how I do that, please leave a comment in the video and I'll make a video on it for you. Wishing you all my best until next time.